Lovely. Moving on to our first of our three reports today. So 7.1, we are looking at the information request from Council's Infrastructure Committee. So the first one regarding the section of Local Government Act and roading name policy. So that can now be closed out because it was loaded up on the hub and all councils will have access to that. The Waka Kātahu further information, well, that was received through email on the 1st of September to all councillors.
Just a
yes.
question. James Cargill's reply around the showgrounds entranceway, State Highway 1, Bridge Street, was a whole lot of waffle. He didn't actually advance it any further than we were at. Mm-hmm. And same with the sealing of the portion of the State Highway. Again, no real answer to that. So can we follow up and put some pressure on Whakatahi to actually deliver what they promised us?
Thank you, Councillor Printing. Welcome, Susie. Susie, do you want to speak to that?
Unfortunately, I haven't actually seen James's reply, but yes, I can certainly follow up. We've got a session prioritising the RLTP development tomorrow in Christchurch, of which they will be there, so I'll verbally do that and then also follow up via email. So yes, that's fine. And Andrew also may want to respond to that.
Yeah, I'll certainly take that action and go back to James Cargill to get a firm reply. That's all I can really do. Whether you get one or not is another question.
Yeah, my question is similar in, does it meet our expectations on what they said they were going to rehab, which was from Hobbs Street through to Luxmore Road, which I understand some of the issues with extending the seal further, but the issues are right through that corridor. And, a year ago, whenever it was, he committed that he was, the road was get a full rehab, but now it's only part of the road that's going to get a full rehab. And there again, it goes to the underspend and back to our district. So I just think we need to challenge that.
All we can really do is challenge that, push the point. They will always come back and say that we're working to national priorities and that their funding is limited. Yeah. But we may be even bringing it up through the Regional Transport Committee. Another avenue.
Can we go with them on what they're actually spending in our district? Because I think people need to know, especially coming into election year. Sorry, this is slightly off the topic, but this frustrates the hell out of me. That people need to know that the dollars aren't coming back here, and our roads are crap, and they're funding infrastructure in Auckland and elsewhere. So I'd like them to be transparent and know exactly what they're funding back into our district.
I can certainly take that as an action, and we can do that.
Sorry, just great.
That's right. We'll put that on the action point for our next stand. For our next standing committees, we will replace the top one. And any more questions regarding that that action? Yes.
He did give us did he give us a date for the Evans Street resealing, like the serious job, or have they postponed that as well?
Wasn't it the summer?
Yeah.
What was the summer?
In his response, from what I read, it committed to part of it. So Luxmore through to Hobbs, which is where some of that replacement pipe's going, but it doesn't go from Luxmore through to up the hill through the showgrounds, because obviously there's some other things that need to go through there, but they've partially committed, would be my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It was my understanding that due to the culvert not being done at the showgrounds, they weren't going to proceed with the rest of that. So that potentially is a major issue because we're actually waiting for the developer to do that job. And I understand that perhaps under the current circumstances may not be happening. So there's a potential major issue there that is going to disrupt our main transport corridor unless we've got some powers to make things happen around at the developer of the showgrounds.
I have seen some correspondence from Whakatahi involving the showgrounds developer, and they're basically reviewing that agreement and sort of realising that it's probably not going to happen as quick as they would like it to, and they're taking the lead of actually doing that project themselves.
Okay, moving on to the update on Peel Forest landfill, so we are waiting for consent, so hopefully in 6 weeks' time we might have something. Okay, so 7.1 is that, is receive and note this report. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Scott, and seconded Councillor Burt. All those in favour? Aye, carried. Okay, moving on to report 7.2. So Susie, the seal extension project approval, take the report as read, and you've made one recommendation there that I'll let you speak to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I'll take the report as read, but just noting that we have not had any applications for 50% funded seal extensions from any residents in the Timaru district. As such, there's an available budget to allocate if the committee wishes to, and the budget that is approved in the annual plan is $330,000. So officers recommend investing in the Rangitata Gorge seal extension due to the high ongoing maintenance costs, sole access for a number of properties, resilience reasons, and an existing long length of unsealed road, which is 31 kilometres, and it has a large heavy vehicle component of the traffic volume. And just also noting that there are some 90 kilometres across the district that would benefit for either accessibility, safety, dust nuisance, or traffic volume that would benefit from being sealed for users and adjacent properties. And basically, if we funded around, as in the report, around $1 million per annum, it would take approximately 10 years to complete these sections. Unfortunately, long seal extensions do not meet the Waka Kotahi funding criteria or the draft government policy statement that is just out for consultation at the moment. So the work would need to be fully funded by council if there is no adjacent landowner contribution.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll go to Councillor Oliver first.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to support the recommendation, obviously, with the introduction of a bit of forestry up in the gorge. There's been several, those truck movements and heavy vehicle movements are only going to increase. Currently, the seal stops at the top of the hill, which isn't ideal, and obviously coming up from Cole Hill, it's a little bit windy, and I think those residents up there will definitely benefit from this and will be very grateful for this to be done.
Thank you. Mayor Bowen.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I don't support any option. I guess one of the issues that I have is actually we need to throw a cost-benefit lens across this. If you look to the cost of grading on some of those roads, which, it's indicated that there's a cost here, but it would be great to know exactly what that looks like. And I know I've talked to Councillor Pye in regard to this, some sort of matrix framework in and around cost benefit on where all these lay, and so we can actually make a decision on, hey, if there's a high cost associated with Rangitata Gorge as such, we actually know what the numbers are, and then methodically go through around the decisions, and we can put weightings to some of those other factors. And I recognise that Nadine's here in regard to the road and the dust issues, and I think it was one of the points that actually she raised at that and put some weighting in behind that. So I think there's some a framework that needs to be built in around this for us to be able to consider. And also just like to highlight that we are effectively looking really hard, and to the point I think Scotty made around cutting our own cloth, and I think we've just got to be really lined up before we make these decisions. And so I'd rather see that as a savings until we've got some better data around this at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to welcome Jan up from the Geraldine Community Board. If she can come sit next to you, Mayor Bowen, please. She'd like to speak.
Thanks, everybody. I'd like to get behind support for this idea. It's a section of road that's got lots of judder bars and some steep drops and lots of corners and so on. So obviously there are some hazards involved there, but also that it's a secondary feeder road that we're looking at, and there's quite a tourism component there. And while I'd never be advocating for mass tourism up the gorge, I see it as a pretty fickle seasonal industry, which can have some negative impacts on more dependable year-round industries. We do need to take account of that tourism component and that it is growing. Yeah, so that's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pye, then I'll come to my left.
I'd probably just like to endorse what Mayor Bowen's already said. I'm not supportive of any option at this stage because I don't feel like we have all the information, and we're only in the report considering two roads where I think we should be looking at all of the unsealed roads across, and on one road we've got several residents, on the other road it doesn't really talk about how many residents there are, and I just don't feel like we have all the information. And then to Jan's point, she's just talked about the tourism factor, so yeah, I'm supportive of actually not doing anything at this point until we can have all the information and make an assessment across all of the roads.
Okay. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, look, I guess my concern is that each time we put some seal down like this and then the trucks start driving all over it, we're back there. It might cost 300,000, but then we're back there a year later and actually we're spending $1 million. So that would be one concern for me. I think if a whole lot of trucks going to be using it, due to some logging, you're best to leave it in the interim in shingle, and so you're just grading that. I'm sure that's going to be a lot cheaper than building the road up and putting a proper substructure in.
I just want to let Mr. Dixon reply to that, whether your facts and figures of $1 million in a year's time is correct.
No, we would certainly build the truck factor into the design, so it would be built to withstand the traffic volumes that are anticipated on that. So yeah, we wouldn't be going back to it in a year later or 2 years later or 3 years or whatever. So yeah, we certainly account for that, and we can build roads to that standard. Unlike highways who tend to cut corners, we do it properly.
Susie.
Yeah, just to add to that, yes, we would be accounting for the heavy traffic volume on any of the unsealed roads that we'll be looking to seal, as we have with all of the pavement rehabilitations we've done. So like, out on Te Moana Road, Earl Road, for example, all of those ones that we've done some big pavement rehabilitations on the sealed road. And just noting that the recommendation 1 is only for a short section. It doesn't get us right to the bottom of Coal Hill, unfortunately, because it's just maximising the available budget. So it would only be a couple of kilometres at that level of investment. It costs a lot more to do the full section.
Just point out, we do have a seal extension policy, and that policy does take into account traffic volume, houses affected by dust, the hierarchy of the road, and the recommendations here have been based on that policy. So we can provide further information if needed in that, in the assessment of it. There is a lot of roads that could potentially be put in through that policy. We haven't done them all. We've only done what we consider the higher priority ones.
Councillor Shannon.
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to ask. On board with what Councillor Pai and Mayor Barn are saying there in terms of more information to make better informed decisions at the council table, but I would have assumed you'd already been through some sort of prioritisation yourself and assessed against whatever data that you needed, and also this particular one must have been highlighted way before this week's meeting and is budgeted for. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. There's been a fair bit of work done in the background to bring in against policy and looking at percentage heavies and bringing in some other componentry around that dust nuisance, that safety, for example. All of the unsealed roads that have made the list, which are basically in a similar situation to this with number of houses, etc., are economic analysis against those is low, so there is low benefit to doing the work. So when you look at the economics alone, but when you bring in the other factors, safety, resilience, dust nuisance, etc., that's when they start to, the intangible benefits. But yes, there's a bit of work that goes into it. Perhaps there could be something out of this, just suggesting through you, Madam Chair, that we could look at maybe the seal extension policy itself and look at reviewing that and building a multi-criteria analysis process for that.
Sure. Thank you, Susie. Mayor Bowen.
Yeah, look, I think this should be considered, against other roads, and maybe this has been prioritised, but I also want us to consider it against the overall budget. And if we don't, and it's the opportunity cost of $1, and if we don't spend $1 today, we can look to, is this across council's priorities the best place to spend this $330,000? And at the moment, I think actually we should just take a pause on some of these costs and just reflect and look and deep dive into our budgets, understand where the money should go. So that's why I'm still supportive of doing nothing at this stage.
Okay. Councillor Pai.
I just wondered if, you know, you talked about the assessment work that's gone in behind here, if we can make that publicly available so it's more transparent, so that residents understand how roads are prioritised and then needing to come and make submissions on annual plans and things like that, because I thought, you know, if the whole community understands that, we might get better buy-in.
Thank you.
I think a point I will make too is that an unsealed road is always going to be cheaper to maintain than a sealed road. And it's just, sealing of roads is more of a level of service discussion rather than an economics.
Okay, any more questions from the floor? No? We all good? So,
I just make a quick comment.
oh, absolutely, councillor Oliver.
Obviously, on reflection of the prioritisation of this piece of road through the policy, I'm happy to move the recommendation to do that seal extension on Ringtata Gorge Road.
Sorry, I can't hear that last bit.
I'm happy to
Move recommendation
move the
one.
recommendation for the sealing of Ringtata Gorge Road.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, councillor Shannon. All those in favour, say aye or raise your hand. 1, 2, what's that? 4, against. 2, where's that, 6? Okay, motion not carried. I feel like I need a hammer. Okay, so maybe we can talk about further at some stage about where to from here.
Yes, would
look
you
at
like
the
to
policy.
see a further report on the seal extension policy and opportunity to review that?
Yep, that sounds like a great idea. So a breakdown of how many vehicles are on these unsealed roads and the type of vehicles. Because the trucks, cars, yeah. What about residential and schools? Be included? Would you like that? Residential dwellings and schools? No, sorry. I got it out in the hand. Sorry. Okay, we're going to move on to 7.3. Okay, so 7.3, we are looking at the infrastructure key project updates for the first quarter. So just a note from my discussions with Mr. Dixon, that Peel Forest, we hope to include that in the next meeting because consent should be through and we'll have some progress updates with it. So we'll just work through this report with each project. The first one is the Road Renewal and Improvement Program. Susie, do you have anything to add?
No, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Nice pictures. Moving on to page 28, the Red Roof Landfill Cell 3.5 and gas flare. Oh, yes, Mayor Bowen?
Oh, no, I'm interested to know the cost and sort of benefit. That you don't, it doesn't have to be definitive down to a dollar, but around the nitrifying trickling filter, because that is a good solid piece of infrastructure that we put in there. And what is what are we trying to achieve with that?
It's basically part of the treatment that's required before we discharge into the lagoon.
Just to help meet consent.
It's a consenting issue. There is quite high nitrates around the runoff around the landfills, so as part of this is to reduce those nitrates. You're right, it's a compliance issue.
Okay, moving on to the downlands, Tianawai Reserve covers. So the tenders evaluation and due diligence is in progress. It's from the 5th of September, so they're just looking further into options.
Yes, we are still evaluating the tenders on this particular project. We have two very different systems that have been proposed, and we I guess, going through a due diligence and assessing those of what is best for the long-term life cycle, the whole of life cost in regard to this. So that work is still continuing, and we are seeking further information from the suppliers, and then we'll be reporting back. It will go to Tenders and Procurement Committee.
Opahi pipeline renewal. 85% completed. Yes, councillor Shannon.
Just a quick question. Recent progress as trenching has reached across the river now. Work around Waitui Stop Bank is commencing. Through discovery, there is more to be done here than initially anticipated. Meaning what?
Where was that?
More work to be done here than initially anticipated on the Stop Bank. What have you discovered?
Waitohi Stop Bank.
Yeah. Look, unfortunately I can't answer that, but yeah, all I can say is that that has been overcome, and we are on schedule to have this finished by the end of the month. So,
Good. Right. Thank you.
Parera pipeline renewal, which is coming close, May 2024. Okay, Timaru City Town program. So I'm going to go to Councillor Booth. What's your questions, please?
Yeah, look, I'm just a little bit concerned at the continuity of the rollout or the people involved on the council's behalf. I understand that Selina's been doing a good job, is actually on the move, and that it doesn't appear that we've got anyone that's actually taking ownership of this project, which is actually quite a considerable one. That since I've been involved and OJ's been the chair, we've had quite a few changes, and it seems to be sort of shifted from post to pillar. There's a little bit of a concern, and especially such an important project that we're embarking on. It's not the sort of thing that we should be doing ad hoc. We should be actually ensuring we've got the right people involved. I'm not sure about the fact that we have the people that have been leading it have now actually got a consultant from Wellington who is actually a project manager. They are then contracting on, or we've sort of passed the baton to them. The baton's been passed, I presume, to a urban designer somewhere. So it's like a big thing that goes round, and every time it's quite disjointed. It feels like that to me anyway, and I'm quite concerned about we're spending money and actually it's not being well spent, and I guess a lack of planning potentially. I shouldn't say that, but I would have thought that if we're doing anything, we should have an urban designer right beside us, and guiding us and making sure that we're actually doing the right things as we're doing them, even at this early stage.
Mr. Dixon.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. This project has undertaken transformation really, and what it was originally. So we have a very robust project plan in place now for this, and we have, I assure you, controlled costs a lot more than what was previously. There is a number of different tranches that are running concurrently here. So we're doing you've got the private partnerships, which Venture Timaru are doing. We've got our quick win projects or minor projects, which is underway, and they are being delivered. And the big piece is the master plan. Now, Isthmus Consultants are preparing that master plan. There will be a draft that's getting launched in next week, I think, or a couple of weeks' time, somewhere in there, and which will be discussed with the steering group, and then before it goes to any public consultation, or before it comes back to council in the first instance, then on to public consultation. So that is the big piece of work that will set the scene. After we get the master plan adopted, we'll be looking at urban design and how to actually get the stuff on the ground. But there is a lot of work going in the background. Selina is still there, by the way. She is working 2 days a week on City Town. So
And I think from the previous meeting, I did make the suggestion that all councillors should be invited to the master plan meeting that we are having as steering group, which I think is in a fortnight, so I'm not sure whether fellow councillors have been invited to that meeting, but that was suggested at the time. Anything further, councillor Booth? Okay. Any other questions on the floor? Lovely, move on. And then we move to CPay project. Had a lot of water down there, but no damage was formed.
No damage was done. Went for a swim, part of it, and yeah, and it was pleasing to note there was no damage. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Stu. That was one of my questions. I was hoping the burst pipe hadn't set back the project, so that's really good to hear. I just wondered with the reports that the update report we received, it's progress dated 30th of June, which I think must be incorrect because when I looked back at the last report, that was also dated 30th of June. And the spend between last month's last standing committees and this one is only around $100,000. So I just wanted to are we still on track for the council spend? Or is that starting to escalate? Because we don't seem to have spent any money between the last report and this one, so are we slowing down or how are we going?
yeah, the costs
With my
have
council hat on, not my CPlay committee.
the costs have been very tightly controlled on this
Yeah,
project,
okay.
and yes, we are on track with the council spend. There is no request come through for any additional funding from council, but the committee themselves are still, I guess, applying for external funding. They have the basics are fully funded, but there are some extra stuff that they would like to see, so they are seeking funding for that. And if that funding is successful, it will be incorporated in the construction.
Yes, councillor Paddington.
I just wondered in the projects whether last couple of years ago we spent an inordinate amount of time on chrome platers on North Street. At the time it was one of the New Zealand's worst contaminated sites. We were going to move forward on that. I know the stuff's been taken away and I know we've budgeted in our annual plan a cost for that, but can that pop back up so we actually are aware what's happening with that? And the second one in that category is the Pariora Dam.
If I just can respond to the Pariora Dam, and that has been discussed in the Audit and Risk Committee, and a motion was passed that we would do no further work in that space with the Pariora Dam. It is extremely challenging with landowners and everything else, so it is agreed that we will leave it as it is. And
Well, perhaps, Andrew, if we could get some of the background on that, you might decide something in Audit and Risk, but it leaves 9 councillors unknowing whatever the number is that aren't on that committee.
I'll ensure that the Audit and Risk Committee report is put to the Infrastructure Committee at the next meeting.
And chrome plate as well. Do you recall where we are with that?
I'm not involved here.
Oh, hello.
Trudy. Yeah.
Welcome, Trudy. You've learnt about chrome platers already?
Kia ora, through you, Madam Chair. Those reports do go through the Audit and Risk Committee. We can arrange for those reports to be recirculated, because they're issues on a watch list, Councillor Paddington.
Again, that's not very helpful for the rest of the councillors that aren't on Audit and Risk and get asked questions.
You are. It doesn't matter if you're not on the committee. You're welcome to attend any of the meetings.
And a lot of that's public excluded, and there will be people in the community that are interested in it.
Yes, there is public excluded for various reasons, parts of that. Yep.
It's part of the risk register.
Anything more, councillor Paddington? You right? Yes, councillor Burt, then councillor Booth.
Yeah, so from the audit and risk, I mean, it's the stuff around the chrome platers. We're basically sitting in a position whereby if you go to the contaminated rehabilitation fund, there are 10 projects on that, of which are the big 10 for the whole of New Zealand, and on there sits the chrome platers. As a council, you know, we are in a position where we've said that we were just a conduit for that to happen. We don't need to make a decision on it. We shouldn't make a decision on anything because we shouldn't have any liability at all. It's with other government departments. We just need to sit back and wait for when they make a decision. Nothing will happen until there's an effect beyond the boundary of that, and at this stage there isn't. The only time it will become an issue is if there's a fire or a significant earthquake, and then the other things will come into effect. But we need to hold our position on that. Don't need to discuss it, don't need to keep bringing it up, and we need to just let that just sit until those other government departments do what they're supposed to do, and in the spirit of what the decisions we made back some time ago. Just as an update.
Thank you, councillor Burt. Just before we go to you, councillor Booth, I'm going to welcome Nicole up to the table, please.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. An update on the chrome platers. We have been approached by the Ministry for Environment, and I've been working with a fellow officer at Environment Canterbury. They're encouraging us to put an application in for stage 4, and they have some money. They want to see this project completed and remediated. So I'm in the process literally this week and next week of pulling together a draft. They've been in contact with me to work through that draft. I am looking at how we will end up with 0 costs on this. So finding a different way of actually having the building brought down onto ground, and at that point then the remediation kicks in. So there is also private interest, which I haven't had a chance to update. It's just come through this last week with Trudy, of somebody that's interested in the site as well. So there's a fair bit moving on the chrome platers at this stage.
Thank you, Nicole. And councillor Booth.
I'm just interested to know if we've actually rated our ratepayers for any costs for the chrome platers.
Do you know that? We are approaching Ministry of Environment, and I've stood by that 0 to our ratepayers, and how do we get this fully remediated through stage 4, and it goes up to ministers for that conversation once we've actually put the application in for stage 4, which is the final stage. They have paid for all costs to date, and that we received a letter from them asking us to engage with them, and that there was funding available. So we're just going to go through those processes now.
Thank you, Nicole, for the update.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Yeah, Mayor Bowen.
Oh, no, just comment, our cost would only be our staff cost in that regard.
For some reason I thought I'd seen something in a budget where there was a monetary value put on it, a bit like Peel Forest, and it was included in a
I think it's always been clear that council, you know, is not expected to bear any cost on this particular building. But it is a responsibility of the Ministry and Environment Canterbury.
Anything more, Mayor Bowen? No. Okay. So the recommendation is that we receive and note the progress reports. I'm happy to move that if I get a seconder. Thank you, Mayor Bowen. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you for your attendance. Infrastructure closes at 6 past.